Today we are going to talk about Ray Bradbury and his short story, A Sound of Thunder. Before we actually get started delving into the story, though, I would like to talk a little bit about who Ray Bradbury was. Ray Bradbury is very noted for short stories, novels, children's books, plays, screenplays, television scripts, poetry. He was mostly a science fiction writer with a vivid imagination, lively style, and also contributed socially in commentary that set him apart in the world of fantasy and science fiction writers. He was one of the rare individuals whose writing actually changed the way that people thought and looked at the world. He had more than 500 published works, showing his great imagination and creativity. And his novels are absolutely unforgettable. Some of them include The Martian Chronicles, The Illustrated Man, my personal favorite, Fahrenheit 451, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. They're absolute masterpieces. They're timeless, and they appeal to audiences both young and old. In recognition of his amazing contributions to the world of literature and the impact that he's had, Bradbury was awarded the National Book Foundation's Medal for Distinguished Contributions to American Letters and the National Medal of Arts in 2004. He calls himself a teller of tales and a magic realist. He also claims that he remembers everything. In a video that I watched about him, he said he even remembered his birth. But he's remembered every book he's ever read, every movie he's seen, all the events of his life beginning in 1920. He actually died just several years ago in 2012. But all of those memories and his big imagination were very relevant in the fiction that he created. He was a very imaginative child. He had fantasies, nightmares, and his writing portrays those with portraits of Venus and Mars, time travel, ageless children, never-ending rain. But he was also a very concerned citizen and worked very hard in the social realm of his life. His fantasy stories are often warnings against what could happen with blind faith in science, but they do tend to be optimistic. He does give strange twists to everyday objects and events and challenges his readers to really look at those events as if for the first time and to look at things in a very different way. As a writer, he lets readers see science through the excited eyes of children, but also informs, showing us ways we can use technology more responsibly and effectively. So that was Ray Bradbury. His story, A Sound of Thunder, is going to remind you a little bit of the ideas of George Orwell, who said, "Who controls the past controls the future." So in this story, Bradbury implies that things that seem like they're not that important, that they're kind of insignificant, actually can change the future for an entire generation. So I want you to think about kind of these questions and have them in your head as you're getting started reading. How might the actions that you take during your lifetime actually affect someone who's living 100 years in the future? And do you believe that you have a responsibility to future generations to kind of think about the behaviors that you're exhibiting, the actions that you take, and whether or not they're going to have a huge impact on the future to come? So here's a little bit of background for you about the story. The year is 2055 in the future. One of those, of course, science fiction qualifiers. Eccles, who's a wealthy hunter, wants to travel back in time to shoot a ferocious dinosaur, a T-Rex in this case. Eccles has traveled the world. He has shot all kinds of animals, and he wants now to go bigger and shoot this dinosaur. But he has a little bit more than he can handle when he actually goes back in time with Time Safari Inc. So I want you to be thinking about the idea that even the tiniest things that happen when Eccles goes back in the future could drastically impact what happens when he returns to the present. I also really want you to look at his style of writing. He is very image-based. You're going to see a lot of imagery, a lot of figurative language as he creates the setting and he describes his character. So really pay attention to that. Where do you see similes and metaphors and hyperbole? We could easily compare a lot of his writing to what we saw when we read Kurt Vonnegut's Harrison Bergeron. A lot of similarities in the style there. those things are all going to be contributing to the mood, which is very suspenseful, very tense. So I think you're really going to enjoy the story. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Look for examples of that figurative language, of the mood, of the theme, and also where you see possible examples of foreshadowing throughout the story. All right, enjoy A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury.